This new Battlefield 6 Season 2 gameplay teaser looks like a deleted scene from the original Battlefield 1 reveal. If BF6 is dying as so many are suggesting, I certainly would not be opposed to it following in the same footsteps of that beautiful game, minus the double gas grenades on launch, overpowered bomber planes, and the various problems this icon sadly had. With the sound of a helicopter flying by, it seems more in tune to paying respect to the Battlefield 2 Special Forces expansion. Comparing player numbers to COD HQ, an app of multiple Call of Duty titles, is a little dishonest. Though Steam could be reflective of what is happening on console, without pure console play counts, we are not quite seeing the full picture some are painting. If it is the case that Battlefield 6 is dying, my theory is this. Battlefield 6 won't be saved by a mountain of new content in terms of bigger sandbox maps, maybe a meat grinder too along the way with plenty of new weapons, rather through core gameplay changes, building on what BF6 is doing right, and expanding on the Battlefield formulas that have worked so well in the past. I doubt we'll all agree on what those are, but opening up the seemingly abandoned discussion on open versus closed classes certainly needs to be a part of all of these discussions, but we'll cross that minefield later on. In my view, Battlefield plays best when a tug of war is allowed to take place. No tug of war, there is no game. Cairo, undoubtedly one of the best maps, started to fall apart when players could reach out-of-bound areas, killing the natural flow of the game this map allowed, and frustrating those capturing objectives and simply navigating the map in the process. Jumping on drones is nothing new, and I'm not entirely against fun sandbox elements like this. BF6 needs more of them, but they do need to be considered when they become game-breaking. Without roof campers, Cairo is some of the best Battlefield ever played. Dare I say, it is this generation's Grand Bazaar or Send Crossing. It is that classic CS-inspired design that leads to great gunplay, objective moments, and perhaps most importantly, huge replay value potential, which other maps are certainly lacking. In Breakthrough at least. Conquest and Escalation seem fine for the most part, and I don't want this discussion to be entirely about Breakthrough, but I feel the problems in this mode often eventually make their way to the rest of the game. Cairo has two distinct objectives, much like the great CS maps, separate with their own flavoured battles, but well-defined locations that interact and are affected by how each is played out in various ways. Do you go A or rush B? Push mid and compete for the opening routes, maybe flank around completely, or via connecting sections, with enough space for one to take a breather and for the traffic to flow. Which objectives are taken first, and where players to travel to has a notable effect on the rest of the match and how it all plays out. The opening shots, the flanks, the moments, the memes, and most importantly the back and forth action, the tug of war potential is all here. Again, no tug of war equals no game. That lack of tug of war, that lack of replay value is what's hurting other maps, and I believe it's one of the biggest issues facing the game right now. Again, to repeat myself, Conquest and Escalation appear to be mostly fine, for now at least. I am focusing on Breakthrough here, not simply because it's been my favourite mode since Battlefield 1, but I strongly believe it represents what players are looking for more in video games these days. When Breakthrough is done so well as it was in operations within BF1, a much richer and satisfying experience is had. Like Cairo, St. Quentin Scar begins with two distinct objectives, separate but contained areas that play quite differently to each other. Multiple routes to travel, do you push A and go through the trenches, perhaps take a long wide push over here, away from the chaos, well, until you unleash hell from behind on Bravo. Teams could flood through both flags and dominate, perhaps defense would push back hard and you'd go through several battalions before anything is accomplished. Such a thing is missing at times in BF6. I'd describe it as simply being able to get back into the fight. Cairo no doubt has these moments, but not including battalions was certainly a mistake. Despite the difficulties and struggles to make progress upon enemies' lands, battalions gave players hope, another chance of success, offered new ways to play the game, and a reason to keep on pushing. It's not that other maps don't have replay value, it's just that some are simply turning into one long big choke point where nothing you do seems to have a notable effect on the outcome of the game. You've no doubt been stuck in a spawn trap on Manhattan Bridge, being sniped from all angles, and punished for trying to play the objectives. So what do? Players often sit back, snipe, and rarely push. You can't really blame them, they are just adapting to the battlefield ahead. But that lack of being able to get back into the fight hurts the game long term. Players stop pushing, stop taking risks, and the variety of gameplay is reduced. You only have to look back at Iwo Jima's return in 2042 to see it happening in real time so quickly. A brilliant map on Conquest. Breakthrough though, attackers often push the defenders back to the tunnels and the map would be lost in no time. Hey, I enjoyed those tunnel flanks, don't get me wrong, but when matches often fall back to those tunnels swiftly, it often becomes quite the dull experience and games are over so quickly. Being able to get back into the fight is so important, as that is where replay value resides. Kat often brings up this video of mine during discussions of this. Highly recommend it if you want to see all of this happening in a real game. Sadly though, there is more replay value to this BF1 map that is often missing in BF6. This is additionally found by each sector being very distinct from one another. The battle begins in the trenches, then along a much wider space in the next area, between a bastion and more open trenches down the hilly terrain. Onwards you march into a small village where the flow becomes circular, with totally different strategies and techniques needed to survive compared to the mud and blood we've just witnessed, ending in again a very different battle across the open fields. Each sector is very much its own battlefield with its own set of rules. They blend into one another but are very much their own arenas. Unlike Sobek City where the pyramids disappear into the background, you're not a tourist in the better maps of Battlefield 1. And other titles, of course. You are very much a part of the scenery and the battles within. The palace and its fancy ballroom are not just for your eyes only. Fight you must to get there, and oh yes, a dance-off will end your evening in style. Battlefield 1 did not forget it was a video game, and it did not forget the players' participation in all of this. These are not fancy-looking images on the back of the game box. These are real, and you will be drawn into these locations and become part of it. Participation is a key ingredient to the absolutely epic atmosphere of Battlefield 1 that DICE built. That is somewhat missing in BF6. It's not that it isn't there, Cairo has plenty of it, but we lose so much of it across many other maps. Happy Camper TV's operations experience in Portal explores the potential atmosphere that BF6 could provide. Merak Valley trenches are flipped to the side, offering an entirely different experience where what you do seems to matter more. More action in the trenches before we head into the forest ahead. Helicopters above feel even more threatening and have an incredible presence that is often missed across other maps. With how successful trench warfare was in BF1, it's an absolute shame BF6 did not explore modern trench warfare even further. This Portal experience shows there is certainly much more to it. Manhattan Bridge is a great map that shows great atmosphere, great gameplay potential, especially on Conquest and Escalation. When we slide over to Breakthrough, a common theme of what is wrong with the game is further revealed. Much of Breakthrough is slowly becoming one big choke point, or one team dominates, and this is where the experience starts to weaken. Players often get stuck and are unable to cross this long line here. There is far too many angles of attack, and the chance of dying is extremely high. It's easy to say just put on smokes, get a full squad together, and you'll get through, but even that doesn't often work, resulting in one-sided matches, whether there's attackers or defenders, and a similar kind of experience with each round. Objective placements and capture areas across all maps need to be reconsidered more, as many are simply not playing as best as they could, and most definitely not offering much in terms of replay value. Vehicles also need to be adjusted for each map too, especially their numbers. Armor currently overwhelms Liberation Peak, and if no one takes them out, the map in Breakthrough is lost in no time. Vehicles certainly need a big pass, but that's a whole other conversation. As an infantry main, I'm not against vehicles. In fact, they are what makes Battlefield Battlefield. Countering them with weaponry or simply avoiding them is fine with me. Do not remove them or make silly mistakes like taking out little birds back in BF4 Rush on certain maps. DICE have done this many times in the past, very bizarre decisions that make maps incredibly dull and boring. Leave vehicles in, just consider them more and have them more balanced. Like infantry, vehicles need to have room to breathe and do what they do best, while at the same time they must adapt to the battlefield, much like their fellow infantry, to deal with the road ahead. Vehicle warfare was an essential piece of the great atmosphere found in BF1, but again they need to be considered more here in BF6. Of course, in all of this, I believe we need to bring up the discussion of open versus closed classes once again, a topic that seems to be completely abandoned from the space for a long time. Can't lie, open is fun, using what I want is fun, especially AR with engineer, SMGs on support, but there is an identity being lost here. There is teamwork not being seen, and that I do worry about in the long term. BF1, in my opinion, did classes extremely well. There was a balance that perhaps was almost perfect. A blueprint, if you will, that I think DICE and the other studios really need to expand upon. Assault dominated close range and destroyed vehicles. Medic was more mid-range and healed teammates. Support for the medium to longer ranges, ammo for all. Recon goes along with the snipes and could help spot enemies. With good aim and positioning, any class could be used outside of these respective ranges, of course, but there was a balance present, something that open classes can never quite achieve. At least from what I'm kind of seeing here. Like I said long time ago in the beta, open classes is fun, but long term, I still don't know if it is the right call for Battlefield. I just think right now it's a bit wishy-washy in places, and I think further discussion needs to be had. Do we need to touch on time to engagement? I think it's obvious by my own thoughts on this from the discussions we've had here. I will say the spotting needs to be toned down. Being instantly beamed for showing up as a diamond is getting a little old. I do worry all of these diamonds are stopping teams from pushing up the map. And let's not forget how long it's been since the release of Season 1. We are lacking maps and new things for sure. They do have to full send, drop new maps sooner, and bring out more content. Is RedSec to be blamed for all this? You'll have to convince me on that. It's easy to say resources on this could have been used for multiplayer, but would they? Without BR, maybe they simply would not have allocated them at all. With the rise in Battle Royale and extraction shooters, along with the decline in arena shooters such as Halo, Call of Duty, Quake and many others, I am very convinced players need something more from their games and not just running around small arenas. With Battle Royales and extraction shooters, players have a very distinct input on how the game plays out. It's not always safe sailing, often it's back and forth action, with varying levels of intensity, and is very much an individual's or squad's own unique adventure. Battlefield 1 Operations was full of that. We need to bring it back. Players' participation in how it all plays out has become much more important than ever before. So to say just remove Battle Royale and everything will be fine, sadly I don't believe big AAA titles can survive that way any longer. A good variety of experiences seems to be a common factor in games succeeding and surviving. Talking of content, I wouldn't be opposed to BF6 doing what BF1 did, taking set locations and expanding them across other maps, reuse content in interesting ways. Both maps are different and feel new, but with this Amiens and this map right here, I think this is totally fine and needs to be explored more in BF6. I would love to see a different version of Manhattan Bridge in a different area with different takes on how the game could play out. Perhaps I've rambled too much about Tug of War and the replay value here, but I strongly believe it's important. Very important. This channel began with hobby videos on Bad Company 2, BF3 and BF4. With the support from you guys, I went full time with streaming and videos across BF1 and BF5, absolutely full time, then mixing in Warzone 2042 and other titles along the way. Without your support over the years, I would not have been playing Battlefield 6 and been on the Community Council for the last 2 years. It's been a real privilege and an awesome experience that I cannot thank you guys and teams over at the studios for enough. Having spoken to Vince Zampella during a visit to Los Angeles during this time, the passion and want for this game and series to succeed is extremely apparent, and I believe the foundations are here for a great game. BF6 is a good game. It does many things right. They just need to really go for it, take the community's input, and do what Battlefield does best. Vince was a really cool guy to chat to, an absolute icon and true game changer in this space. May he rest in peace. I played and streamed enough Battlefield to see what I believe is hurting the series in the long run. The way the maps play out naturally changes with time, experience and knowledge alters the way we approach the terrain ahead, and this appears to be happening with BF6 much faster than expected. Players are getting a little bit more defensive, not pushing up the map, and there is a little bit more one-sided games going on. I'm not saying there is not other issues with the game, nor am I suggesting it's this simple. I just firmly believe Battlefield plays best when it's a tug of war. Components of the game need to ensure this can take place. It doesn't matter the setting, the weaponry, the maps, or anything else. If there is no tug of war, there is no game. Battlefield, please.